Welcome to a USD Coyotes football preview. A big game tomorrow at the DakotaDome. Big game's probably an understatement. Just with a lot of the hype that's around it. Against the North Dakota State Bison in the FCS quarterfinals. The first appearance for the Coyotes in the quarterfinals comes against a very experienced team at this stage in the Bison. Today I'm joined by Jacob Nielson of the Mitchell Republic. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Eric, I'm doing pretty good, man. Excited for this big matchup tomorrow, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if it's really a show, but we'll see how it goes. So I guess just first off, it was 24-19 up in Fargo. Just kind of what do you remember from that game, and just where do you think the teams have improved the most since then?
You know, I South Dakota, they took advantage of their moments and they struck, those two big touchdowns to Carter Bell. They got some big stops in the red zone. And they did just enough to win. I think they might have caught North Dakota State off guard a little bit with how physically they were evenly matched. That was probably the most impressive part, right? In terms of total yardage and stopping the run. They really showed that, like, hey, like we can kind of get after it with the best of them. And so what's changed probably is I think both teams, South Dakota, they're no longer the plucky underdog. Like they still probably have a little bit of that mindset, but they've won big game after big game, and so they know how to do this. They don't see themselves as inferior to anybody. And then North Dakota State, on the other hand, they seem like they've really developed. Their offensive line play just looks a lot better, and they just seem to be more looking like themselves than they did in the middle of the season.
Yeah, it seems like for the Bison, the big playabilities there. I remember in that game against the Coyotes, it just felt like USD had the upper hand with that big lead because USD's defense wasn't going to give up the big play. North Dakota State had to take these long possession to even get within 8 in the fourth quarter of that game. So it was gonna take a turnover. It was gonna take something like that the Coyotes just didn't give up in that situation. So the USD played that ball control game really well, and I think we'll see a little bit of that this week. And Madden's commented on that in his press conference, saying when you have two teams that like to control the ball, it's going to be a quick game. So it's going to be interesting to see how NDSU's big playability that they showed, especially against Montana State last week, translates into the DakotaDome tomorrow.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what kind of went down in Bozeman because they really utilized this dual quarterback threat, and that wasn't really what carved up Montana State as much as it was Tamarick Williams, right? And it almost looked like I know football is way more complicated than this, but it almost looked like they were just like selecting like NCAA video game '08, just HB toss and just getting it out to him, and then he had these massive holes just to shoot through, and that's something that Bob Nielsen talked about in his press conference of, hey, like we did a really good job limiting these explosive plays the first go around, and we need to do that once again. And like you said, both teams huddle, right? I bet the fact the game's on ABC, it'll be dragged out as long as it can. But in terms of actual game time, yeah, if either team is sustaining drives, like this is gonna go relatively quickly, and then it's about who can maximize those opportunities.
And the Cavs have done a good job of maximizing those opportunities. They're one of the better teams or best teams in the FCS as far as not turning the football over. Defense is able to create takeaways, as we saw last week with JoJo Gaines's interception and Mikey's Grace returning that fumble for a touchdown. What's impressed you just about the Coyotes defense this season?
Everything, right? They're such a complete team. It seems like the leadership has lifted it. Just having guys like Brock Mogensen, Stephen Hillis, Brendan Webb, just they set such a high bar, and it's a team that doesn't miss tackles. And it seems like when you're watching a football team that never misses tackles week by week, you almost take that for granted. Like, oh yeah, they're just doing their job. But like, you're a football junkie. You watch the Broncos every Sunday. Um, I grew up watching crappy football. Like, there's teams that miss tackles all the time. Like, that's a part of the game. And as simple as it is, South Dakota doesn't really do that a lot. And they're always in position. So that's something that just week by week the team talks about doing their 111, right? That's the kind of the catchphrase you'll get if you talk to them. But I think there's some validity to that, and they just do a good job, and they don't really quit at all. They don't let off the brake on a certain possession or a drive. They just keep their foot on the gas the entire game.
Mm-hmm. And we don't know the stats of Shaheed Barrows. I'm going into tomorrow. Caleb McKenzie was taking first team reps at practice when I was there Tuesday. Um, but just how impressed were you with Caleb McKenzie and Dominic Reeves, and just the way they were able to really step up there in that game last week?
Yeah, it speaks to the depth, right? And that it's heartbreaking to see Shaheed go down like he did. You and I were both on the field. I don't know if you saw him, but he looked like he was really really disappointed. Obviously, we don't. There's no official word what the injury is, but he looked like he was down, had the towel over his head, and those guys came in and they played good football, and that's something that I mean Tevin's gotten plenty of play this year in certain aspects, right? And so he's kind of shown his worth. Um, but yeah, it just speaks further to the quality of the defense and the consistency, and then they have the depth there too.
Yep, yep. And talking with Caleb, he really credited the coaches prep in the way they prepare all the players to get in those situations. Mentioning Coach Taylor and Coach Johansson there. And then on the offensive side of the football, you have Aiden Bauman at quarterback, but I feel like the Coyotes have kind of been a run first team the whole year with Travis Tice, Charles Pierre, especially later in the year with Charles Pierre. Just I guess what's the most impressive part of just the versatility of USD's offense heading into this matchup this week?
They just have plenty of options to go to, and like you mentioned, the emergence of Charles Pierre Jr. has been really awesome. Early on we thought it was going to be Nate Thomas, and then he had some injuries, and it kind of hasn't really worked out that he's been the main guy. He still gets some carries and is effective, but having either Tice or Charles Pierre Jr. and then it seems to me like they, like you said, they're a run first team, but they really, really enjoy the opportunity to be able to open that passing attack. And Aiden Bauman, he doesn't, depending on the game, I guess, but for the most part, he doesn't have a lot of um, pass attempts from game to game compared to other good quarterbacks. But the ones that he has, they're effective, right? Against Sacramento State, they ran the ball probably 2 out of 3 times. When they pass the ball, boom, he hits JJ Galbraith for a 75-yard touchdown, right? And so I kind of think that it wouldn't hurt to maybe pass the ball even a little bit more. They do such a good job of trying to establish that run game, and I guess it's been working, right? Like you look at their record, like it speaks for itself. But some of the weapons they have in the receiving room with Carter Bell, Jack Martins, JJ Galbraith, and then you got other guys, Javion Phelps that caught his first touchdown pass, and it's like, oh man, could he maybe get into the offense more if they did pass the ball more? And I guess at this point, it's the playoffs, right? So it's not the time to really try new things. You're going to go with what works. But those are just kind of some thoughts I've had as the season sort of progressed.
Yeah, I guess one um, not to argue or anything, but just over the bye week, they were able to install that package where they had Travis Tice or Nate Thomas line up at fullback, and I feel like just the fun formations like that are really add another side to the offense. Nielsen's mentioned how he wants to get two of the running backs on the field at the same time in various situations. We've seen Keandre Jones line up at wide receiver. Bauman's tried to throw it deep to him a few times so far. Haven't connected yet, but just with Keandre Jones' speed, you would think at some point it's bound to happen. We'll see if that's this week. But I guess just with that, what's your prediction for tomorrow?
I go back and forth with what's going to happen. On a previous podcast this week, I did pick North Dakota State, and so I'm going to stay consistent with that. I think this USD team, they do feel like they have been a little bit disrespected. Like, hey, they went into the Fargo Dome and beat these guys. They're the number 3 seed. And I think that they can win it. I really do think this could be a 50-50 game, but I'm erring on the side of experience as are most people. And it just seems like this North Dakota State team has improved so much, and they kind of hit the roll a little bit. And I mean, in the FCS playoffs, South Dakota State experiences, so if it's a little bit of a curve, like you get there, you got to suffer some heartbreak before you can really break through. Seems like North Dakota State, they've been there, they know what it takes. It is in the dome, right? So I think that does change things, that it's in the DakotaDome, not the Fargo Dome. But gun in my head, I'm gonna take the Bison.
Yeah. Well, they'll have some fans there apparently, from what I hear. I'm going to go ahead and choose USD in this one by a score of 20-17. I think it's going to be kind of a knockdown, drag out game. One of the phrases Urban Meyer always used was street fight. I think we can see that just with the physicality both teams present in this game, and also versatility offensively. I think whoever really gets that big play going, especially in the first half, is probably gonna get that lead, and the lead's a big deal, especially when you have teams that huddle, teams that like playing that ball control sort of offense. But I think USD pulls it out. I think Montana will beat Furman tonight, so I think that whoever wins will have to travel to Missoula next week. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Yotes in this one.
There we go.
No,
Hey,
all
I
right,
forgot to say my score. I'll say 24-20 for the
24
Bison.
20. So
Yeah,
late touchdown for NDSU.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Jacob, thank you for joining me today, and I guess I'll see you tomorrow, and looking forward to a big time game in the Dakota Dome on Saturday.
Should be a good one.